Seth Rollins' current situation has suddenly become one of the most intriguing storylines in WWE. A knee injury sustained during his match against LA Knight at Saturday night's main event triggered what many are calling an audible in real time. But the question remains, was the injury legitimate, exaggerated, or entirely scripted? Paul Heyman, who refers to himself as Rollins' Oracle, isn't offering much clarity, and he prefers it that way. For him, the uncertainty only fuels WWE's ever-evolving narrative. Seth Rollins being injured is a fact of life, Heyman said in an interview with CBS Sports, promoting the July 23 launch of WWE 2025 for the Nintendo Switch 2. It's an inherent danger in this industry. Heyman's confident tone mirrors early reports, yet it does little to confirm the truth. While most insiders believe Rollins is genuinely hurt, there's still debate about whether the injury happened on Saturday or if it's being used to mask a pre-existing condition. But for a seasoned veteran like Heyman, who has spent over 4 decades in professional wrestling, the uncertainty is more than just chaos. It's a calculated part of the storytelling machine. 1 minute ago, a man the WWE Universe once called indestructible was quietly given news that could change everything. Seth Rollins, the visionary, the architect, the workhorse of this generation, has been diagnosed with a fractured knee. And while the headlines only suggest a temporary setback, what Paul Heyman just revealed tells a much darker story. This may not be a pause. This may be the beginning of an end. Heyman, often known for bending truth into drama, shocked the wrestling world not with hype, but with sorrow. In an off-script conversation backstage following the announcement of WWE 2K25's release, he paused before speaking, leaned forward, and uttered 5 words that left reporters stunned: "It's worse than they know." For years, Seth Rollins has been the center of chaos and glory. A constant in WWE's unpredictable landscape. But according to multiple backstage sources, this injury isn't just a minor disruption or a creative workaround. It's a reality that's finally caught up to a man who's given every ounce of himself to a ring that never gives back. And now, as WWE officials scramble for statements, and social media swells with speculation, Paul Heyman has stepped into the spotlight not as a mouthpiece, but as a harbinger of truth. In the next few minutes, we'll take you behind the curtain of a medical crisis that WWE didn't want to talk about. A fracture they hoped to tape over with storyline. And a man who may now have to reckon with the terrifying possibility that the war he's waged with his own body is one he can no longer win. But first, let's go back to where it all began, not in the ring, but in the silence after the bell rang last Saturday night. Seth Rollins vs. LA Knight at Saturday night's main event was supposed to be a showcase. But for those paying attention, something was off. Rollins limped. Subtly at first. Then visibly. Commentators hesitated. Cameras cut wide. And in the final moments, Knight called an audible. A whisper. A signal. And just like that, the match ended, rushed, messy, unresolved. No post-match promo. No signature laugh. No high-flying stomp to close the night. Just Seth Rollins, clutching his knee in the corner, his jaw clenched not in character, but in pain. Immediately after, he was escorted backstage, not by referees, but by medical personnel. And in the chaos of the arena, few noticed the panic behind the curtain. But one man did. Paul Heyman. The wise man. The so-called oracle of WWE. What he saw, what he heard, and what he chose to reveal days later, has turned this injury from speculation into shock. "I've seen men break bones, rupture tendons, shatter dreams," Heyman said. "But I've never seen Seth look like that. Not him. Not like this." At first, fans believed it was a work. A red herring to build suspense ahead of SummerSlam. But according to Heyman and verified by backstage reports from WWE medical staff, Rollins suffered a grade 3 ligament tear, an injury that compromises stability, limits mobility, and in rare cases, ends careers. And yet, WWE didn't announce it. Not officially. Not in a press release. Not even through their usual Twitter feed of injury updates. They were silent. Until Heyman spoke. In an interview with CBS Sports about the upcoming WWE 2K25 release, Heyman was asked casually if Rollins' injury would affect storyline direction. What followed was a moment of unexpected vulnerability. Seth Rollins being injured, he said, is not a swerve. It's not a gimmick. It's a fact of life. And for some of us, it's the one fact we didn't want to face. Those who were present during the interview say the room went still. That Heyman's voice trembled for a moment. And that despite his reputation as a manipulator of emotion, this time. It wasn't a performance. He's in a bad way, Heyman continued. The knee's not just fractured. It's unstable. His body's been telling him to stop for years. Maybe it's finally screaming. According to sources inside WWE's medical department, the injury may have started as a chronic issue. A wear and tear degradation in Rollins' right knee, the same one he originally tore back in 2015 during a live event in Dublin. That injury kept him out for over 6 months. But what no one ever reported was how incomplete that recovery truly was. One doctor, who requested anonymity, said the current fracture is in an almost identical spot to the original ACL tear. But this time, the surrounding tissue is weaker, more inflamed, and harder to treat. He's been compensating for years, the doctor said. His body mechanics shifted. He's been adjusting, overtraining, pushing past pain thresholds that most athletes would never dare cross. And now it's catching up. That insight triggered a wave of retrospection. Suddenly, fans began noticing moments they had dismissed, the slight limp during his Raw entrance, the grimace after a frog splash, the refusal to bend that right leg fully when climbing turnbuckles. It had always been there. Hidden. Ignored. Masked by charisma. Until it wasn't. When Paul Heyman learned the full diagnosis, he reportedly walked out of the trainer's room in complete silence. He didn't go to creative. He didn't call talent relations. He sat in the corner of the loading dock for over an hour. Alone. A staffer said they had never seen him look like that. No notes. No script. Just a man who looked defeated, the source said. Later that evening, Heyman composed a private message, not to the WWE Universe, not even to Triple H, but to Becky Lynch. One that reportedly read, "He'll need you more now than ever. The cameras are going to want him. Don't let them. Not until he's ready. Not until he's whole." The message was simple. But in it, there was heartbreak. Not just for an injury. But for the man behind the performer. The husband. The father. Because Seth Rollins has never been just a superstar. He's been the heartbeat of the company. The man who never stopped moving. And now, that heartbeat has stuttered. WWE's internal reaction was immediate but cautious. While creative scrambled to rewrite SummerSlam plans, upper management began negotiating how to control the narrative. There were talks of announcing it through kayfabe, an attack angle, possibly involving Braun Breaker or Gunther. A chance to shift blame and keep the machine rolling. But Paul Heyman reportedly objected. "Don't turn this into theater," he said during a closed-door meeting. "This man broke for real. Give him that respect." And so, in a rare moment of vulnerability, WWE stayed quiet. Until now. Meanwhile, backstage tension is rising. Some talent are furious that the truth was hidden. Others are rallying behind Rollins. Posting cryptic messages, emojis, and subtle references to support him. Finn Balor posted a black and white photo of Seth from 2016, captioned simply, "You came back once. You'll come back again." But what if he doesn't? That's the question that no one wants to ask out loud. Not even Heyman. When questioned further during the CBS interview, Heyman was direct. "This is not the kind of injury that you bounce back from in a few weeks. This is months. Maybe more. And depending on how he responds to treatment, maybe longer than anyone wants to admit." Privately, WWE's internal medical assessment is grim. The initial healing phase alone could take up to 8 weeks. Physical therapy would follow, slow, painful, grueling. And even then, there's no guarantee of full recovery. Especially not for a performer who relies so heavily on dynamic movement, high-impact landings, and theatrical endurance. And what of the emotional toll? Sources close to Becky Lynch say she's struggling. That the strength she shows on camera is a mask. That she's torn between being a supportive partner and being WWE's top female talent during its most vulnerable moment. She's heartbroken, one insider said. But she's also angry. She warned them. Warned Seth. He was pushing too hard. And now he's shattered. Seth Rollins, known for his explosive energy, hasn't been seen since Saturday. Not at Raw. Not even via digital check-ins. According to Paul Heyman, he's recovering in isolation. Far from the cameras. Far from the noise. He's always been the workhorse, Heyman whispered. But what happens when the horse collapses in the middle of the track? Silence. Heyman doesn't have that answer. No one does. But in one final statement before he exited the CBS studio, he said something that no one will forget. Some men break bones. Some break records. Seth broke both. And now, he has to decide which one matters more. And as the world holds its breath, waiting for a tweet, a video, a sign, the truth remains unspoken but undeniable. Seth Rollins is broken. And for the first time in a decade, we don't know if he can rebuild. In the quiet halls of an undisclosed medical facility just outside Orlando, Florida, Seth Rollins lay still beneath the dim glow of a wall-mounted light. His right leg, braced and elevated, was the only part of him not covered by a heavy white blanket. A rhythmic beeping echoed faintly from a heart monitor nearby, steady, but slow. The kind of slow that only comes after shock. After pain. After surrender. Outside his room, a woman stood frozen, her palm flat against the door. Becky Lynch. The man. The icon. The mother of his child. And in this moment, the only person in the world who understood what it cost Seth Rollins to stop. According to those close to the situation, Becky had been trying for weeks to get him to ease up. He wouldn't. Not during a build-up to SummerSlam. Not when Paul Heyman was crafting what some were calling his most ambitious creative arc yet. Not when the eyes of the industry were once again focused on him. But now, that relentless drive had turned into a whisper from Paul Heyman, from physicians, from those who once dared to think Seth was untouchable. That whisper now rang louder than any arena pop. He may not come back. When Becky finally entered the room, she didn't say a word. She simply sat beside him, their fingers interlocking instinctively, like two puzzle pieces that refused to separate even under pressure. He was awake, barely. "You still smell like the ring," he rasped, his voice dry. Becky laughed through her tears, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "You're the reason I can't leave it," she whispered. But as her words floated into the air, they met the thick, invisible presence of dread. A presence Seth couldn't hide anymore. The toll was there. In his sunken cheeks, in the trembling of his fingers, in the way he refused to look at his own leg. That leg had carried him through Iron Man matches, through Shield wars, through cash-ins, titles, betrayals. It had carried him through WWE's golden eras and into its uncertain future. And now, it had buckled. Becky later confided in close friends that it wasn't the injury that scared her. It was the silence. Seth wasn't complaining. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even crying. He was quiet. "He's never quiet," she reportedly told Charlotte Flair in a late-night phone call. Not unless something inside him broke harder than his body. Meanwhile, backstage in Stamford, the panic had spread. Triple H had convened emergency meetings. Raw's entire trajectory had been built around Seth's upcoming title program, one rumored to involve either Gunther or Bronson Reed in a SummerSlam double main event. That was off the table now. writers scrambled. Some pitched a bloodline cross-brand invasion angle. Others suggested pulling a returning legend to plug the hole. One writer even dared suggest elevating Dominic Mysterio to the main spotlight, a pitch Heyman reportedly dismissed with a single glance. But Triple H wasn't focused on scripts. He was focused on something else: guilt. According to a senior WWE official, Paul Levesque had known for weeks that Seth's knee was unstable. Not broken. Not torn. But volatile. Rollins had missed several in-ring drills. His knee had been icing twice a day. He'd requested fewer house show appearances. There had been signs. But as SummerSlam loomed, as pressure mounted, the machine kept rolling. And now, the machine had run over its most loyal gear. Heyman, when asked privately if Seth should have been pulled sooner, gave no comment. But his face said everything. What he did comment on, however, was the unexpected visitor that arrived 2 nights after the diagnosis. Roman Reigns. No press. No security detail. No entourage. Just a single black SUV, pulling up in the back lot of the medical facility at 11:32 p.m. He walked in quietly. No tribal chief aura. No championship over his shoulder. Just a hoodie, black jeans, and the look of a man who understood what it felt like to lose control over his body. According to a nurse, Roman waited patiently outside Seth's room until Becky emerged. The two exchanged only a glance. No words. And then, Reigns walked in. What followed wasn't caught on camera. There were no photos, no leaks, no tweets. But according to Heyman, who was told of the visit shortly after, it was one of the few times Roman Reigns let his guard down completely. They talked about pain. About fathers. About what it feels like to stand in front of 50,000 people while your knees feel like glass. Seth reportedly asked only one question. Did you know when it was time? Roman didn't answer right away. He just stared at the leg brace. At the man who had once super-kicked him into oblivion. At the friend he'd betrayed in kayfabe, and respected beyond measure in real life. When the silence gets louder than the crowd, Roman finally said. That's when. The next morning, Reigns was gone. But Seth was different. More alert. More grounded. And when Heyman called later that day, Seth answered with a single word. Ready. But what ready meant remained unclear. Ready to return? Or ready to let go? WWE, meanwhile, began subtly preparing the audience for an extended absence. Commentary segments were rewritten. Storylines softened. By Monday Night Raw, there was no mention of Seth in the SummerSlam main event promos. Instead, fans noticed a tribute package, brief, almost imperceptible, featuring his greatest moments, set against somber instrumental music. It wasn't a farewell. But it felt close. Internally, WWE has authorized a 6-month rehabilitation schedule for Rollins. That would sideline him until early 2026. A gap that would see him miss SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and potentially even the Royal Rumble. But some believe the timetable is optimistic. Others, including Heyman, believe it's irrelevant. He'll come back if he decides it, Heyman said in a backstage interview after Raw. And not a moment before. As fans flooded online forums with prayers, predictions, and conspiracy theories, one thread rose to the top. It was titled, "Did WWE just lose its last warrior?" Inside, a fan wrote, "There's a difference between injured and broken. Seth didn't just get hurt. He got hollowed. And if he doesn't come back, it's not because he gave up. It's because he already gave everything." That post was shared 300,000 times in less than 24 hours. Becky Lynch saw it. So did Heyman. So did Seth. And for the first time in days, he smiled. But the smile didn't mean he was ready to walk again. To fight again. To burn it down one more time. It simply meant, he was still here. For now. It had been 4 days since Seth Rollins' diagnosis was confirmed. 4 days since Paul Heyman whispered the words that shattered the illusion of invincibility. 4 days since the WWE Universe began mourning something that hadn't yet been taken from them, but felt dangerously close. Inside the backstage production suite at WWE headquarters in Stamford, Triple H stood staring at a blank whiteboard. No angles. No arrows. No SummerSlam booking plans. Just a void, the exact shape of Seth Rollins. He hadn't spoken publicly. Not yet. But he knew the silence wouldn't last. In fact, it was already cracking. Because Becky Lynch had asked for a meeting. Not as the man. Not as a WWE superstar. But as a wife. When she walked into the office, the air was different. Not confrontational. Not aggressive. Just heavy. He wasn't supposed to wrestle that night, she said without preamble. You knew he was limping. Triple H looked up slowly. His eyes were tired. Not from sleep deprivation, but from something worse. Doubt. I knew, he replied. But he insisted. He said he'd be fine. Becky didn't blink. He would have said that with his leg falling off. Silence filled the room. Real silence. Not the awkward kind. The kind that sits between people who love the same person and know they failed him in different ways. Triple H finally spoke. I never saw him as breakable, he said, almost to himself. He was the guy who showed up no matter what. The one who stayed when everyone else left. The one who carried us when Roman stepped away. The one who stepped up when no one else wanted it. Becky's voice was a whisper now. And now he can't even walk to the bathroom without help. The words weren't meant to wound. They were meant to wake. Triple H leaned back in his chair, exhaled, and finally did something no one expected. He removed the whiteboard from its easel and laid it face down on the floor. No plans. No pivots. Just space. Then we stop everything, he said. No tributes. No storylines. No fake comebacks. He gets real time. As much as he needs. Becky nodded. And when he's ready. Triple H finished the sentence for her. He comes back his way. Or he doesn't come back at all. That was the first real promise made since the injury. Not to the fans. But to the man who had become the soul of WWE. But while backstage meetings and private vows offered small comforts, the WWE Universe needed something more. Something honest. Something human. Something only one man could deliver. Paul Heyman. It wasn't planned. It wasn't sanctioned by the higher-ups. But on the following Friday night SmackDown, as the main event concluded and the show was about to fade to black, the camera cut unexpectedly to the backstage area. There stood Heyman. No lighting. No graphics. No music. Just a shot of him against a concrete wall, holding Seth Rollins' ring jacket, the one with gold studs and fire-stitched sleeves. The